Welcome back to the channel, everyone. Today we're going to be going through a Brit reacts to 25 myths about America. So I'm curious to see, one, what the myths are, and also what this British person's perspective is on those myths. Let's get into it.
25 common misconceptions about the United States that simply aren't true. Really excited to jump into this. Before we do, I appreciate if you guys can hit that subscribe button down below. And I am posting extra content to my Patreon page. Link is
Like he said, hit subscribe below. I don't have a Patreon yet, but I'll look into it.
in the description. But yeah, let's jump into this and check out this 25.
The United States often draws a lot of flack from the rest of the world for everything.
Okay.
From its foreign policy to the way it runs its...
He did say foreign policy here. I'm curious what your perspectives are. I think in America, at least this is the perception. I think the expectation is that other people just aren't a fan of us when we go to their countries, that, Americans are just known to be rude or noisy or just don't care about other cultures or whatever it is. I feel like this is kind of a stereotype of like Americans going somewhere and visiting and probably being obnoxious, and then the locals not being a fan of them. I'm not sure if every American actually cares, which is probably why we get that stereotype. But curious your thoughts. Please put some comments below if you have opinions or you've interacted with Americans in your own respective countries and see it one way or another.
affairs.
Right.
In fact, it seems like there are few things that can divide the world more evenly and more strongly than asking people what their opinion is of the United States.
Yo!
Everyone has an opinion.
Fair enough, fair
Even
enough.
in the same city, you'll meet people who fall on the extreme sides of the spectrum.
Okay.
But what is it exactly that causes America to be so messed up? Even
Is it
America's
messed up?
own politicians can't seem to stop talking.
Messed up was definitely quite the phrase. I'm sure given current political climate, some people would agree. I think it has even Americans divided on how things are going right now. But messed up is a strong phrase. I'm not sure if... I certainly don't think I would agree with that. I think we have challenges, but I do think given enough time, we correct them. And I think iteration is good. I think experimentation is good. Sometimes things go well and sometimes things don't go so well, but as long as you're progressing over time, I'm definitely a progress, not perfection type of individual.
Not how messed up things are.
Okay.
Well, today we're going to take a deeper look. Are things really as bad as everyone seems to think they are?
Right, let's see.
I'm Mike with this 25, and these are 25 common misconceptions about the United States.
This is going to be super interesting. Me being from the UK, I'm going to let you guys know if that's what I thought, and then if I was proven wrong, etc, etc. So yeah, I'm looking forward to this, man.
That simply aren't true.
Let's see.
And as a very important note, this list was produced by both a United States citizen and two European citizens that relocated
smart.
to the United States.
That is nice about this list, is that there was a collaboration to come up with this list. So I'm looking forward to it. And I'm also looking forward to the fact that we'll have another individual, though not live, reacting to these same myths and then telling me or us what they think about it and whether these things are true or classically known where they're from.
It's written to be as fair as possible.
Wait, he said two Europeans. Wait, two Europeans that moved to America.
Americans that relocated to the United
relocated.
States.
Okay.
It's written to be as fair as possible. No, I'm not two Europeans.
What?
Or am I?
Da.
Let's begin with a really common thought. Americans are ignorant about the world. Americans are held to an unrealistic standard. Since the
I know why this is. I know why this is already. It's because a lot of Americans that I've spoke to anyway, a lot of Americans seem to have not been anywhere other than America, right? But I totally get that. Do you know what I'm saying? Your country is that big, you don't need to. You know what I'm saying? Like, bro, you have
These are some great points that he's bringing up already. I think I might have even mentioned that as one of the myths I was anticipating going into this. But agreed, there's a lot of people in America who have never left America. There's actually a lot of people in America who don't even leave like their hometown. I see the point that they're making right now, which is America is very big. Like America, apologies if I get this exact reference wrong, but I'm pretty sure America is like just as big, if not bigger, than all of Europe and maybe even the UK included. And so basically, the time it takes to get from like the East Coast to the West Coast is maybe like a 50-hour drive, give or take. So you could be very, very far into America and still be like days away from other parts in America. And that's not even including like Alaska or Hawaii.
51.
The rest of the world watch our movies and listen to our music. They know a lot about our country. But let's be honest.
Right.
They never studied it. People actually complain that Americans don't even know that Czechoslovakia doesn't exist anymore. But neither does half the United Kingdom. And
Oh, I'm glad he said that because I was just thinking. Wait, Czechoslovakia don't actually exist, do they? No, they don't. But like, that took me a while to realize.
they're on the same continent.
Okay.
It turns out that all of us are pretty bad at.
So this is a good point that he's bringing up, which is some people actually get to see a lot of American culture, and this is what I understand, especially from interacting with folks from other countries, is like a lot of our music and TV shows or movies are pretty prevalent in other countries as well. So you just pick up on some American culture, maybe learn about some of the different regions of America, predominantly things like New York City, for instance, or Los Angeles are pretty common, and then maybe a few cities here and there. But these are kind of just ingrained in how you understand the world and like how you interact with the world because it just pops up. In America, it's pretty rare to have music that comes from any other country. I think sometimes more prevalently like the UK or anything English spoken, but anything past that doesn't happen. I believe this is more common in other countries, especially like Europe, where there's a variety of languages being spoken and they're kind of close to each other. And even for movies, I don't think it's that prevalent to watch that many movies from other countries. There's just so many movies, so many TV shows that exist here that you could basically just spend your entire life not even noticing it, or maybe just see one or two. So this, I think, is pretty true so far. I don't think they're that familiar with other geography.
True.
You'd think America would be better at it. However, considering another common thought is that America spends its days spying on everyone.
Not everyone.
And that's true. But
Spying on everyone? I wasn't expecting that. I would certainly expect spying on ourselves because I'm pretty sure that was a thing like 10 years ago where the government admitted to like spying on everybody through like their cell phones and everything, and we were just okay with it, I guess. We didn't do anything about it.
who doesn't?
True. Yeah.
Germany,
Facts.
France, Switzerland, Japan, Iceland, and all the rest of us spy
Everyone.
on each other and ourselves.
True.
Moving on, America has been called racist.
So before we continue on to this next one, which is probably not surprising, I would expect every country spies on each other to some extent. Like that's the point of having spies. I'm not sure if America is particularly known for it, though their military is much more funded than other countries. So we might be doing it more.
Please don't take this the wrong way. Racism definitely exists.
Sure.
And it makes the news.
Bro, this is like, bro, racism is unfortunately everywhere. Do you know what I'm saying? Like,
But you know what else? America also has a vicious media, and all of the world watches it.
that's
Sometimes
Agreed. I would say certainly racism does exist in America for sure. I don't think anyone can say it doesn't. But to my understanding, racism exists in every country. I think probably the only countries where it doesn't become that prevalent is other countries that are especially smaller and there's not that much diversity. I think that's one of the downsides of having so many different cultures all close to each other, is that not all of them are going to get along right away. I think even America historically, the way it's gone is new immigrants come from a particular country. Obviously, even British people originally come in. The people who are living in America at that time, not a fan of those latest immigrants. And then over time, their cultures sort of meld in together. And then the next group of immigrants come in. And then the people who've been there for a while dislike the new group of immigrants. And then the cycle kind of repeats. This has happened a number of times in American history. And so it's certainly like we're on this cycle of new immigrant group comes in. There's some dissatisfaction, definitely some racism. And then you just kind of keep repeating. There's also like the broader racism in America of like going back to older times of things being a little bit different, slavery, etc. I'm not sure if this is exactly what they're referencing here, but I think this is definitely something that comes up a lot, quite a bit in social media in particular, or the media in general.
Sorry.
So when something super bad happens in other countries,
It's blown up.
it might not even make the back page.
Oh wait. Yeah. That is, bro. That's facts, man. Let's say some crazy stuff is happening in a European country. Yeah, he just said his own words. It might not even make the back page, bro. In America, the slightest thing happens, boom, it's everywhere. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, that's interesting. Do you guys not make as big of a deal out of some of these things in other countries? This I would agree with. This is like cancel culture is becoming popular in America for sure. And so if things happen, the media likes to bring it out and put it out there. And especially social media can like just go in the weeds on some of these topics.
Next, it's a common misconception that Americans don't use public transport. While it's true
I've
that we
heard
use
this.
cars a lot, many regions in America have great public transport,
Right.
or at least just as good as Europe.
I think this is reasonable. I think we also get this for a good reason, which is America is so large. And so if you think of from like a area perspective or like a landmass perspective, the vast majority of space in America you can only get through either through like trains or predominantly cars. And so there aren't as many like standard buses or like rapid transit that exists into like intra-city or even city to city. Usually you'd probably go like maybe coast to coast on something like a train or something like that, or a little bit farther. But the vast majority is cars. So like if you're outside of a major city, you practically need a car to get around in any of those locations. But one of the interesting things is that actually like a good amount of the major cities in America do have some type of rapid transit system. And a lot of the population is centered around those population centers of the metropolitan areas, like New York City, for instance. I think like Washington, D.C., Chicago, I'm sure California has some. It goes on and on. And so there's a variety of these systems that exist, and they're based in the cities that have the most people living in them. And most people in America actually live sort of towards the coasts for the most part. I think Texas is probably one of the exceptions to the rule, to my knowledge, where it's a huge state and there's actually quite a few people living there. But predominantly people live on the West Coast or the East Coast, where there's actually a variety of public transportation options. But it's certainly rarer. Certainly when I compare myself to how I transport throughout my life and city to city or state to state, it's not what I immediately think of compared to like Amsterdam or someplace else where there's just supposed to be pretty much ubiquitous public transportation.
But it's not good as a train if nobody can afford it. We're looking at you, UK.
What?
Moving on.
Yo, you call UK poor? Yo, to be fair.
I actually have no idea what that reference was to. Was that he seems to be reacting to it as UK being poor? I'm not sure. Is that because they're not supposed to have enough money for it? I don't know if this was a ding at the like public transportation themselves, just charging a lot of money in order to leverage it. If you know more, please post in the comments.
To be fair, listen, we're going through it right now. I ain't gonna lie. People are struggling, bro. And I think people are struggling all around the world, but in the UK, bro, we're going through it.
Yeah, I would generally agree with that. I think most people are considered struggling at this point in time. I think even in America, most people are considering themselves struggling. Inflation has been pretty crazy in the most recent years, so I'm not entirely sure what this guy is originally referencing here on why UK trains are expensive.
America does/has/is fill in the blank. America is
Massive.
far from being a unified entity. Each state has its own laws, cultures, and quirks.
Yep.
Some states
Cool.
have the death penalty. Some don't.
Oh, wow.
Some have strict gun laws, and some don't.
They're so
Some
different.
have free college. Some don't. Some have tax, and yeah, some don't.
I'm actually not so sure about this one. I think there are differences state to state. Maybe I'm wrong on this. Again, let me know what you think in the comments, but I consider a lot of America to be pretty similar. Like I work with a lot of folks who come from all over the country, and they seem to get along pretty well. It's not like we have drastically different views on anything in particular. Some of these other things are a little bit different or maybe being misconstrued slightly differently. So, the taxes, for instance, America has taxes broken up into a variety of options. So, there's property tax, there's income tax, and sales tax are the most common three. And so most states have a combination of these. And so some states don't have, maybe some might not have sales tax, maybe some don't have income tax, but they'll definitely have the other ones in almost every other case. And so this is where they're all trying to come up with filling their bucket of taxes one way or the other. And so it's not like you can go to one state and just never pay any taxes at all. Just how you pay them and like what they're based off of may change state to state. Certainly, like gun laws, things like that are more prevalent. I think I had heard a fact somewhat recently that actually there's, I think, more guns than people in America, which is mind blowing to me because in some states that have stricter gun laws, they're not that common at all. Like, I can't imagine even 1 in 10 people having a gun, but that means there's probably areas in America that some people are having 2, 3, 4, 5 guns, presumably, to get to those types of averages. But on the other side, some of those places I would expect are much more rural. So these people are probably using them for hunting or maybe taking care of livestock or protecting their livestock. These aren't necessarily just gun-toting people for the fun of it. I'm sure those people exist. Obviously, this is America, and that's definitely a caricature we have of Americans. But I think that they have different needs. Whereas, like in New York City, you're not going to be hunting for game or wild animals in any case in New York City, and guns are basically prevented from being so prevalent there. And so, I don't think it's that different overall. I think Americans are pretty similar, but I could be wrong. I think most people in probably the world are pretty similar. I think we all have families, we all eat, we all drink water, we all breathe. We try to do the best we can. We try to make a living. I think all the other stuff is just things we sort of put in the way to sort of separate each other for media, for drama, whatever it is. So, I don't know. Personally, I disagree with the Americans being so different from state to state.
Wait, there's some places in America that don't have tax? Well, like, I don't have to pay tax on, like, at all? Yo, tell me in the comments right now. No. I'm moving to the States. Like, is it working tax? I don't have to pay working tax?
So just like you can't say Europe is
Income?
so-and-so, you can't say the same about the U.S.
Right.
As an additional note, the states are far more independent than many of us realize. In fact, every state even has its own military, known as the Guard. Furthermore, some states pass legislation.
I'm actually not sure about that. I don't think every state has a military. I think that should definitely be fact checked if anyone knows. I do believe some states have some military in it, but I think it is a choice state by state. Again, there are some state laws. I think that was one of the other things I might not have addressed when he referenced them earlier. So federal laws impact every state in the country, and then the states themselves make different laws. I think one of the nice parts about this is that sometimes states can practice and like experiment with certain laws that then get adopted by other states and then eventually become a federal law. So not every law just comes down from the federal government and goes to all the states. Sometimes certain areas are experimenting with laws, like some are experimenting with like public health care, for instance. So in certain states in America, it's easier and more prevalent to have healthcare that's cheaper or more affordable or covered in some way. And other states are starting to copy that. And this list goes on. And so it does allow for experimentation, which I think is kind of nice.
Contradicts the federal government.
Wait, states have their own military? Yo, you know what's crazy? I bet you some of the states' military could actually take on countries, bro.
This is because in the U.S., the federal government is not the highest authority. The states are.
Oh, wow. Wait.
The federal states pass legislation, even has its own military,
right,
known as the Guard. Furthermore, some states pass legislation that directly contradicts the federal government. This is because in the U.S., the federal government is not the highest authority. The states are.
What?
To further establish the fact that America isn't a single entity, many believe that Americans only speak one language.
Right.
But that's no different from the rest of the world. Have you ever been to France? Or the UK? Or Italy?
UK?
Or how about China? Most of them only speak one language too.
Right.
That's an interesting point. I don't know if this is true for all countries, especially because, well, in Europe, you're much closer, so maybe this British individual will say one way or the other. But I know, especially for some smaller countries, they do adopt other languages, and they could have 3-4 languages that they learn at a particular time. US does learn other languages. I think as part of standard schooling, we are supposed to learn at least one other language for a few years, is at least what I grew up with. And Spanish is pretty prevalent in America. I think depending on which state you're in, there could actually be like signs in Spanish and other general information. I think even sometimes taking public transportation, there'll be signs and even like audio that is in Spanish, for instance, or sometimes even other languages. So there are other languages spoken here, but one of the nice parts about America is if you speak English, again, 50 miles driving from one coast to the other, like you could spend a very long time just going around and speaking to people in just a single language and never need to have another language necessarily.
I mean, over 20%.
I swear loads of people in America do speak. You know what? I guarantee you more people in America speak another language than in the UK, than just English.
Of the U.S.
That's interesting. That's a interesting perspective he just shared. I don't know, how prevalent is it in the UK to learn other languages?
Is bilingual.
Oh, wow. Wait, 20%?
That being said, over 20% of the U.S. is bilingual.
Oh, wow. That's
Now,
quite a lot.
Let's talk about the military, because people
Agreed. 20% is quite a bit. That's 1 in 5.
outside the U.S. will preach that America's military does, again, fill in the blank.
Does everything.
Nobody is naive enough to think that the U.S. doesn't have selfish interests in mind when it invades a country.
Right.
There isn't a nation on earth that would do that selflessly. But whenever the bad goes down, it's just as common for other countries to complain that America should do something. On a more or less lighter note,
Yo! He's cooking!
Americans are fat. You ever
Definitely heard this quite a bit. It seems to be pretty prevalent. Going to other countries, some other countries, obesity is actually growing in their rates. But certain countries you go to and like never see really any fat people, or like the fat people there are just like an average American, or maybe slightly heavier than an average American.
okay?
What? Yo!
There are even scandals because obese patients are getting turned down for surgery.
What? In the UK? Yo, what?
Wow, I've never heard that before. Is obesity that prevalent in the UK? Did he say turned down for surgeries? That seems pretty extreme.
Think about it though. There are a lot of fat people in the UK. I ain't gonna lie. And you know what I've heard actually that's pretty interesting? I've heard that people who's gone to America expected to see loads of fat people, but then they were surprised. Like, even though there is a load of fat people, right? There's a load of really fit people. Like,
Yeah, I think something that is also probably going to mess with people's stereotypes of this is the places you're likely going to visit in America. Like, number one off the list is going to be like New York City. And in places where public transportation and walkability are easier and better than other parts of America, there's going to be actually like a lower rate of obesity. So my personal expectation is that there's less fat people in New York City than there are in like maybe even New York State or in America in general. And I think that's true for other cities as well. I think it's also less true in warmer areas where people can just get out and move around more. So it's not like everywhere is just like everybody is obese. I'm not sure exactly what people are expecting in other countries, but you can still go to places and people could be pretty fit. And there's also quite a few gyms. I think this is something that is more prevalent in America than other countries, is actually having facilities to go work out in and actually like go and use them. But I think that's mostly because we have to like fight off some of our very unhealthy food that we have here.
Proper like muscle fit people, right? And they were saying it was actually a crazy amount to the point where like when you're in the UK, you don't see anywhere near that many. It's like you got a lot of fat people, you got a lot of fit people. What, you just don't have the in between? Like in the UK, we got a lot of in between and fat, right? The fit people, you don't really see too much. They are there, but not crazy, not crazy. So you kind of like America's like extreme to extreme, bro. Extreme to extreme, but you got a lot of good food. I definitely will be on the fat side. Ain't gonna lie.
Yes, America does have an obesity problem.
Big bellies.
But not all citizens are involved in it. I am. A big part of the United States is fairly health conscious and is consistently working to help the overweight population better their lives.
Cool.
Thanks, healthy people. And while we aren't perfect, many complain that America is worse than other developed nations in, well, everything.
How?
There are many statistics, child mortality, literacy, etc., where the US falls behind countries like Norway and Iceland. But those statistics are based on averages.
Don't like Norway and Iceland beat everybody at everything though? Like I'm not sure if that's just a American problem.
Norway, most of the 5 million inhabitants are rich, white, and Norwegian. If you took a similar sample of rich white Americans in the US, you would find that the statistics are almost exactly the same.
Okay, good point.
The fact is that the US is hugely diverse.
Right.
And the American experience is completely different with and without money. Translation? The problem isn't healthcare or education.
That is a good point that he's bringing up here, which is unfortunately being so centered around capitalism here in America. Money really makes a huge difference. Like it changes what clothes you wear, where you live, like how good your healthcare is, how good your education is, maybe even how good the job is that you have. And I think it's just so centered around this that your lifestyle could be very different from being somebody who comes from a rich background to somebody who is maybe an immigrant and doesn't have as much setup. And so I think that's an unfortunate part about America, but I think that's where, because those extremes exist and because people come here with the hopes of changing their circumstances, that happens. And I know that this can be problematic for some areas where some school systems, things like that, they struggle with being able to help both basically like native English speakers and people who immigrated and English as a second language, for instance. And so I know even, well, pretty unfortunate, I think even some school systems even try to like kick those kids out who have English as a second language to kind of like boost their numbers up, which is unfortunate. Like their goal should just be to help everybody who's there. And so this is something where this might just be a statistics problem. And especially, like you said, he's comparing it to like Norway, who I don't know how many people are going there poor right now or in general.
Economic inequality, almost exclusively.
Right.
And speaking of inequality, many make the simple but powerful assumption that America just isn't safe.
Okay, I'm pausing here because this is something that I felt personally as well before I started checking these videos out, right? So before, I definitely was one that was like, America, like, I'll be scared to go to America. Do you know what I mean? I'd be scared. It seems unsafe. But that's because of the media just blows it at like crazy, bro. The media blows it so crazy, it's mad. I feel like everyone's got a gun on them. Everyone's, you know what I mean?
That's actually a very interesting perspective. I think that could be true. As he mentioned, media definitely references it. Also, like the fun fact of having more guns than people in America, I could understand, especially coming from a country where like gun ownership is illegal everywhere. That could be a frightening perspective. And obviously the media loves highlighting bad incidents like shootings, things like that. And so they'll really put a lot of emphasis on it. I do feel generally safe in America. I think certainly being an American myself, I feel safer in America than many other countries that I have visited, just because I'm more familiar with my area, and I'm sure other people would feel the same. I'm not sure how much people think of being frightened of America itself. I think certain countries do have a bad rap, and I could see the guns thing being an issue.
But yeah, checking out these videos and actually learning about it and talking to you guys. I know that's the case. I know a lot of you guys haven't even seen guns. A lot of you will have guns, but a lot of you haven't seen guns. You don't see them out and about all the time. So yeah, it's definitely the media just going crazy with this one.
This is usually what foreign citizens say until they...
On the seeing guns part, I was actually surprised in one of my visits or one or multiple of my visits. Sometimes you'll actually see like police officers in other countries having like automatic weapons just hanging out, and like that's just how they stroll about their days. They just have that. In America, that's definitely not the case. Like I think you rarely see a gun, especially in states where they're kind of more regulated. And I would assume like you weren't seeing them all that much outside of standard normal usage, like hunting, things like that in other states as well. But like even our police just have like I think a pistol, and it's always kind of like in its holster. You don't really see it. They're not just like toting it around all the time, though I'm sure most media clips you've seen is probably them doing so. Um but actually like seeing police officers in other countries just with like automatic weapons actually did make me nervous the first time, probably even the second time too, for that matter, of me seeing it, because it was just so weird to see like such a high powered like weapon just out and about in the streets as you're walking by. That's certainly not something you see in America all that often.
actually come here.
Right.
By this same logic, Paris, Brussels, London, Madrid, and almost every other city in Europe is unsafe as well.
Yeah, true.
Yes, there are guns, but most Americans have never seen or heard a gun being fired.
Yeah. What
In
I
fact,
just
most
said.
Swiss citizens are much more familiar with gunfire than us Americans.
Oh, really?
All this being said so far,
Wait, is Switzerland? Switzerland is I just said Switzerland. Is Switzerland legal guns?
people still expect all Americans to relish in the life of our stereotypes. Guns, fast food, and freedom! What I'm saying is, a lot of the world looks at America as overly patriotic.
Right.
But here's an honest question. Have you ever met a Russian, Australian, a proud member of the UK?
Okay. He said proud member of the UK. I wouldn't really say UK is that patriotic unless you find a proud member. Like, you know, you go to the local pub, you see the guy with the England top on, football top, right? That's the guy. That's the proud one.
There's no
So that's interesting. I will see where he goes with this. I think probably one of the things that I do hear about America is that there's a lot more American flags everywhere than there are flags in other countries. And so like you could go down the street in America and like maybe a couple houses on that block and on that street will just have American flags. They'll be at like schools, all the buildings. And so you probably can't go 5 minutes anywhere and probably not see an American flag in America, which could be perceived as patriotic or being proud to be American, which I think is probably reasonably fair. But I don't know that many people who are American who are just like, I love America every day. It's the best. America over everything. It's not like how you have a conversation with somebody and they're just like, I love being an American so much. It's, if anything, you predominantly hear, at least from my perspective, how people dislike some of the things that are happening in America. We also have this like left versus right, like liberal versus conservative, Democrat versus Republican thing going on pretty much all the time. Seems almost necessary or part of life. Somebody, for some reason, we just kind of locked into this situation where if you're on one side, you have to hate the other for some reason. And most of the time, those people are complaining about the other group all the time. I don't think they as often say how proud they are about America in general and mean everybody in America. Even if Americans say that they're proud, they're probably just referencing like a smaller group in America.
pride in your country.
No, there's not. There's not.
Us Americans are definitely patriotic.
I like that.
But so is the rest of the world, as they should be. It's not a crime to be proud of where you came from.
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't stop others from thinking we only complain and boast about America whenever we travel abroad.
Everyone does.
This is largely anecdotal. In America, Americans like to complain just like the rest of us.
Yep.
Only a few of them ever even leave the country, so you're meeting an unrepresentative sample.
That's
But
crazy
in
though.
their
How many
defense,
people don't
many
leave.
times, they're right. Yes, this can hit hard in the pride spot, but maybe Europeans could stand to smile a bit more, right?
That is true. Yo, there's so many grumpy, miserable people in the UK. I've said this in so many videos. So grumpy. I'm miserable, man. But what I was saying is like, it's crazy that a lot of you guys haven't been out of America, but the way everyone's got to see it, right, is like you guys have 50 states. A state is as big as a country in Europe. You know what I mean? It's literally America is like me not going out of Europe. Does that make sense? Like I've never been outside of Europe.
He's very understanding of America. I think I've seen a few of his videos in the past, and so he does seem particularly interested in America overall and probably empathetic to Americans. I'm not sure if his perspective is as common as other folks in the UK, but if any of you have opinions, again, post them in the comments below. Let me know what it's like there.
Right? Where it's like you guys haven't been outside of America, bro. That's the same. It's the same distance. In fact, I bet you any money, you guys in America probably traveled on a plane longer than I have. So my longest flight ever was to Greece, and that was 4 hours. Right? That's my longest flight ever outside of the country. And
Wow, 4 hours? This is actually kind of short.
I guarantee you, there's so many people that's been on a plane longer than 4 hours in America.
No? Okay, fine. Back to the apathetic, leave me alone face. By the way, that part was written for our European representative. By our
So don't get in
European
trouble.
representative. I love all of you. Anyways, statistics viewed by outsiders show that the U.S. is lagging behind.
Ready?
Similar to topics we've already discussed, there's another factor that we have to take into account. Reporting. Every nation reports its own
But all the big companies are based in America, bro. How are they lacking? What?
statistics. This means that making statistical comparisons between two developed nations, like the U.S.
I'm not sure if the companies is what he's referencing here. I think I could be wrong on this one, but my expectation is most people assume and think of America as having like one of the best economies in the world. I've even seen some statistical models where they are trying to understand like how efficient a market is and like how well it grows over time, and how sometimes they like exclude America because it's like an outlier sometimes and how well the market does there. And so I can't imagine he's thinking about that piece. When I thought of statistics, I assumed we hear references to things like education, healthcare, safety, those types of things, of that there are especially other countries that can do these things better than America. But again, this is where it depends a lot based off which area you're in, and there's some places that are pretty good or competing just as well. But when you take in America as a whole, some of these things can start to drop down quite a bit.
USA is an exercise in futility. The data is just too close and won't reveal much except that the US counts people one way and the US counts them another.
Right.
That still doesn't make this misconception true. Americans are fake. Here's the thing. In Europe, citizens are almost proud of the fact that they're really standoffish.
Yeah, they are.
But once you get to know them, they're your friend for life.
Right.
Well, here's a newsflash. Once you get to know an American, they'll also be your friend for life. The thing is,
So I actually haven't heard this one, Americans being fake. I'm curious why he's even saying this or what this is reference to. I agree with his other statement. I'm sure any human being from any other country, once you get to know them, you'll be friends afterwards. Like that's essentially how you become friends. And so by definition, if you don't know that person, you're probably not friends. So I'm not really sure where the fake part comes in. I think in certain areas of the US, I think there is somewhat of a sort of etiquette that is expected, especially like Southern hospitality, I think comes to mind, where people are supposed to be nice. They're supposed to do particular things. It is socially expected of them to do certain things, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're your friend at that point in time. And I could see how that could be misconstrued as being fake. But I'm sure there's other countries that have particular social norms that don't necessarily mean that you're best friends with that person just because they do something one way or another.
they'll use this as an excuse to be a jerk in the beginning.
Yo, listen, in the UK, right? This is so true, bro. In the UK, it's so hard to make that initial engagement to make a friend, right? Because we only open up when the barrier's been broke already. But you got to break the barrier, you know what I'm saying? So like, the best way to put it is, let's say I'm going to the bar in the UK. I wouldn't imagine I would come out of that bar with a new friend, right? Or someone easy that I spoke to. Everyone just keeps themselves to themselves, right? In America, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like if I went to the bar, I would probably come out with someone that I spoke to, like a new friend, right? Or at least it would be easy to speak to people. I feel like that's the case.
It might be easier to speak to people. That might be true, but I'm not sure if you're leaving a bar with a new friend. I think it also depends on what type of bar you're referencing. I could see this at like a sports bar, for instance. People are there specifically to watch like a sporting event of some sort. They're just there to kind of like enjoy themselves, hang out. I'm sure you could probably go there and start interacting with folks. I'm not sure if you could be sort of like at a standard bar in a town and just go up to whoever's sitting there and just start interacting with them and become friends. So I'm not sure, but I'm not really into that type of culture in America. So let me know what you think.
Sound coming from an American. I was totally the one who should have read this one, but I digress.
He's good.
On a totally
He's
different
right.
but very popular misconception, Americans are the only ones who call football soccer. Actually, a lot of the world calls it soccer.
Wait, how many people call it?
Really? I actually didn't know that. This is a fun fact for me that I'm learning right now. I have no idea any other country that calls soccer.
Parts of Ireland still call it soccer.
Wait, do they?
Oh, what do I mean by still? I'm glad you asked. It was actually the British who coined the term soccer.
That's actually hilarious. It's also nice that we're like seeing a British person react right now to learning this information potentially for the first time.
Soccer is an abbreviation of association.
Right.
And first appeared in universities in the 1880s, sometime using the variant spelled soccer with a K.
So technically, the first original name is soccer. So you Americans are just calling it by its original name.
The word is sometimes credited to Charles Redford Brown, an Oxford University student said to have been fond of shortened forms such as brekkers for breakfast and rugger for rugby football.
Okay.
Britain actually started using the word football in the late 20th century, possibly because people incorrectly saw it as an Americanism. This next one, Tristan couldn't believe. Could you not?
No.
I'm learning something. To our American viewers, did you know that people in Europe make fun of you for using air conditioning? Why do they need it? Why don't they just...
That's weird. It's a weird thing to make fun of somebody over using air conditioning. I think this is something where it depends, and I think this is a climate-specific thing. So something that you might not be aware of if you're not in America is in certain colder climates, you might not have ACs at all. Like you could have a house, you could have an apartment, and you might even spend a good portion of your life never having an AC unit. And then the opposite could be true if you're in a warmer climate. So like if you're in like Texas, for instance, you might not have a heater, for instance, at all. I think these things are changing. So I believe nowadays it's much more common for most houses in America to have both, but it is still prevalent. You could still go around in colder climates and get a place that doesn't have any air conditioning at all, especially if it's colder, because you're not expecting to be impacted by it that much. Maybe a few months out of the year, it's going to be pretty hot for a few days or a few nights. And so they might just get a fan or something like that, or just open the windows and just kind of bear with it for that short period of time. And I think same thing is true for the hotter areas of America where they won't have heat because it's generally so warm that it doesn't get as cold. And the days that it does get really cold, they'll come up with some other system to just bear with it for a little while, because the majority of the year it's pretty hot for them. So this is interesting. I'm not sure why anyone would make fun of another country for doing that. Like, do you make fun of countries for heating their houses? Like, I'm just not sure I'm following.
Just leave the window open. Mosquitoes, at least in Florida. But here's why they might be joining us soon. During the 2003 European heat wave, 70,000 people died.
Huh?
This was in large part due to the fact that European...
Wow, I actually had not heard of that. That's pretty crazy. This type of thing does happen in America where, well, I was just referencing how some people just try to like power through the hot or the cold, depending on which one is less prevalent in their area. And so this actually happens quite a bit. Some people in the colder regions in America can actually pass away during the summer because they're just kind of trying to power through it, and then they just don't accommodate, like they don't cool down, they don't drink enough liquids. And I think same thing for the cold. for a variety of reasons of they don't have heat, maybe even they have a improper heating source inside their home. And so accidents can happen when people are just trying to like do as little as possible to resolve these problems for them.
Homes are not typically equipped with air conditioning.
First of all, who is making fun of AC? I'm jealous. When I get my new house, right, or whenever I get a new house, I'm renting right now, so whenever I get like a new house, I'm probably gonna get AC installed or get at least a portable AC, right? I need it, bro, for the summer. And secondly, bro, I'm not surprised that many people is dying, honestly. The homes are built to keep heat in. So when it's the summer, it's really, really bad. Like we might have lower temperatures than you guys in America, but our homes keep the heat in. It's horrible. It is actually horrible. Even though the temperature's lower, we're just dying inside. It's unbearable. It actually is.
While they laugh at the Americans for this, hotter summers are going to force them to take appropriate measures.
Yeah.
Especially since children and the elderly are very susceptible. Again, I stand by mosquitoes. I'm not opening my window in the summer. Winter, absolutely. Open windows.
You still get bugs in though. Like I hate opening windows. I do when it's really hot, but you just get so many flies and it's horrible.
The top 9, that's a
Top
weird
9
number. Top 9. Many parts of the world accuse the United States of accounting for 25% of the world's carbon emissions. Not so nice. But it also accounts for 25% of the world's economic activity.
Okay.
The truth is that several nations, including countries like Canada, have higher per capita emissions than the US.
Okay.
Next, let's talk about how the world thinks Americans are ruining English.
Huh?
He went through that one quick. Are these supposed to be ranked by like prevalence or how shocking they are? I'm not really sure which one are supposed to be more common or less common.
Actually, both British English and American English have diverged from a common 16th century ancestral standard, and in some ways, American English is closer to the original than British English.
That does surprise me.
For example, American English has, for the most part, retained the language's rotosity, pronunciation of the R in words like hard, while British has, for the most part, dropped it. Furthermore, this shift in British English...
We dropped the R in hard. So we say...
Yeah, what does he mean by that? I wish he gave an example, but luckily the British individual is going to go through it himself.
Huh?
In the language's rotosity, pronunciation of the R in words like hard, while British has, for the most part...
Hard. I'm confused.
Dropped it. Furthermore, this shift in British English happened around the time of the American Revolution when wealthier Londoners wanted to distinguish themselves from the lower classes. This is only one example, but it goes to show that British English is not an unchanging standard any more than American English.
Right.
On a totally different note, did you know that Americans don't all live in the suburbs? Nope, not true.
Really?
The fact is that in America...
Yeah, I referenced this earlier where transportation like in the Midwest or in rural areas is definitely predominantly based off of car travel, but actually, as is true for almost every other country as well, the major cities get most of the population and people try to live there. That's where opportunity exists. It's where all the fun stuff is. You just generally want to be there for most countries and for most reasons.
Plenty of people that live in cities like New York, Washington, D.C., San Francisco, Chicago, Boston, and the list goes on. In fact, several regions of the United States are very European, like the Northeast Corridor, for example. The difference between the U.S. and Europe is that if you want to live in the suburbs in the U.S., you can, but you don't have to.
Cool.
Now, this next one is just offensive. Americans are all dumb rednecks.
Okay.
Well, there are certainly Americans who fit this.
Wow, is this what people think America is? So this one is surprising to me, especially because going earlier into the American culture kind of being prevalent in other countries, like our movies and TV shows, things like that. My understanding is the vast majority of our media kind of shows city living, like New York City, for instance. And there's no rednecks in New York City. Like, that's not where they come from. So this would be odd to me as as a stereotype for being like the majority of Americans, but I'm not sure. Again, I'm American myself, so I don't think this, but maybe other people do in other countries.
Stereotype, the vast majority don't. Most
Yo, if you actually think that though, like if you genuinely think that, bro, their brain. I feel sorry. I feel sorry, bro. Like their brain must be like pea-sized, man.
Americans live in cities near the coasts. Most of them are educated, and most of them are not very different from Europeans in any significant way.
Right.
Every country has a less educated populace that they themselves make fun of. Even sophisticated nations like Sweden and Switzerland. Fair warning, the last 5 on our list get a bit dark and crazy, starting with the idea that America is imperialistic. In many parts of Europe,
What, like Star Wars? What, like Star Wars? Like the Sith? Like what? They want
It's awesome that his immediate reaction was Star Wars for that.
to make a group and take over? Like, huh?
with the idea that America is imperialistic.
It's a cool flag.
In many parts of Europe, the United States is seen as an aggressive imperial power, even more so than Russia and China.
What does that mean?
This is largely because our military presence both in Europe and everywhere else. But in our strong defense, Americans never forced you to watch our movies, quarter our soldiers, obey our laws, or get permission to leave your own countries. It was the Russians that did that, and much, much more. Food for thought, after World War II, the Americans...
I'm not going to lie, I don't really know what he's meaning by this, so if someone could explain in the comments, I'd appreciate that.
liberated and left. The Russians liberated and stayed.
Yikes.
All right, number 4 is sure to be a shocker to a lot of foreigners. Americans don't actually all walk around with guns. It's just not true.
What? No way. That's impossible. It's also interesting that he has like a child here with like, again, like an automatic weapon. Like he has like a rifle of some sort. Like he is, oh no, luckily there's an orange thing on the front. For a second I thought this was, I don't know if this is AI generated or not, but it's interesting that he has a kid here as part of this image. And again, I think the stats are kind of in their favor if you have this mentality or perspective of America, because unfortunately there are more guns than people in America. So I could see why you would expect, if that's the case, then every person must have a gun. Like Amsterdam, I think there's more bicycles than people there. So I would expect if I go to Amsterdam, like everybody has a bicycle like that. I think it is a fair expectation. Obviously, because it's averages, that means some people have multiple and maybe a few people have none. But I don't know if this is unfair, generally speaking, considering the statistics.
What?
Except for a few places, the only people you'll ever see...
You know what, though? If you don't actually look into America, like I've been watching the video and stuff, I'm telling you so many people believe this. I'm telling you so many people believe this. I did. I hold my hands up. I'm sorry. I did. It's the media, man.
So one thing that might be a distinction here from what they're highlighting is certain states allow basically the ability to carry weapons, and that's a distinction from being able to own a gun. So like in many states, I think the majority of states, I think all states, because it's it's the Second Amendment. So I'm pretty sure every state you're allowed to have guns and you can be a gun owner. And that means there could be a gun in your home, and that I'm sure probably many homes in America likely have guns inside of them. But there's a whole other category for like you have it on you and you're walking around outside and interacting with other people. Even in Texas, for instance, where I think you are allowed to carry your guns, generally speaking, there are certain areas of Texas where like you're just not allowed, like in certain city center areas or certain buildings or venues, they'll just say you can't bring it here. And so it's not like people are just like have pistols out in their hands and it's like the Wild West everywhere in America. So depending on what your interpretation is, this could be true or maybe not true.
Americans don't actually all walk around with guns. It's just not true.
Right.
Yeah, so he does say walk around with guns here, so maybe that's the distinction he's making.
Except for a few places, the only people you'll ever see carrying guns in America are the police. In fact, you'll see more people walking around with guns in Switzerland than you ever would in America.
Yeah, Switzerland must be like, you're allowed guns. Because he keeps saying it.
Okay. we admit that, like most stereotypes, there is some truth to this next one, but it's...
And if that's true, that is crazy, bro. And it shows how much the media has to play. Because if Switzerland does allow guns, nobody ever talks about that, bro. No, like, because I hear over and over again, gun problem this, gun problem that, gun problem this, gun problem that. But if Switzerland has gun... Wait, hold on. I need to check now. I need to check.
I appreciate that he's about to check because I don't know either.
Can you have guns in Switzerland? Okay. It says, oh, depending on the type of weapon, you will require a sales contract, a permit.
In America, you also are required to have a permit, I believe, in certain areas. And again, for the use, like whether you can carry it or not carry it, for instance.
Oh, okay. So you can.
That is interesting. I do agree with their point where I never hear anything about Switzerland and their gun laws. You pretty much only hear about America.
You can, but I think it's just a little bit more like, there's a little bit more to it.
I think that is one of the issues that does come up quite a bit when it is brought up in the media in America, is that it is kind of easy to get guns. Like in many areas in America, you could go to like a Walmart, like a grocery store, or a mixed store, I guess. I'm not really sure how you refer to or categorize Walmart, but you could like go get your groceries, you could get a t-shirt, and you could get a gun all at the same place. And it's like one of the most prevalent stores in all of America. So pretty much every town has one. And so this is where, especially for the background checks, things like that, I think that's where people have a lot of problems. Is sometimes you just sign a paper and you're like, yeah, I'm like 18, here's my ID, just give me the gun. But there's, I think, some skepticism around how thoroughly those people are vetted and like the regulations around who's allowed to have a gun, or like what procedures you need to get qualified for, or certification or training that you need to do before you're allowed to have a gun. So I don't know what that situation is like in Switzerland.
Okay, so you can, but there's a little bit more to it. Interesting. I'm not going to look too much into it because I'm doing this video, but interesting.
Been wildly blown out of proportion. Americans are all crazy Christian right-wingers. There's something so right about saying it with that accent. Yes, there are a lot of Christians in America, and while some of them are crazy right-wingers, most of them aren't. In fact, if you ever get a chance to go and stay with one of those crazy Christian families, you'll see that most of them are just genuinely sweet people that go to church on Sundays.
Okay.
Agreed. I'm not really sure. I'm sure this is true for other countries as well. The people who are particularly religious, I'm sure, get portrayed as extremists in certain situations, but they're mostly just average people. They just have a particular faith that they believe in. And there's a variety of faiths here, but obviously Christianity, I think, is the most prevalent in America. And so there can be some extremes. I think, again, because it gets portrayed in media a lot, even like presidents and things like that have made more of a show of being religious or not religious and bring it into like politics and other things. And so it does come up quite a bit as a topic. And some of these stereotypes can all be grouped together.
This next one sounds like a legit stand-up joke. If you get injured and can't pay for it, you'll just die in the street. Yeah, many people in Europe think this.
Okay. That one is unfortunate. I don't think that actually happens all that much. I think for the, well, you can fact check me, but from my understanding, I think in America more often than not what ends up happening is that people avoid getting care. But there's actually some states, as I mentioned before, that actually have a lot of coverage for healthcare issues in some capacity. Like maybe they are forced to have certain employers do it, or maybe if you're more of a vulnerable population like children or elderly, or you need additional medical care, or you're disabled or a veteran, something like that, that your medical care will be covered. And so I don't think this is as true of people like just dying in the street. I have not seen that. This is not a thing that you just see out and about. And I believe for the most case, basically like paying for healthcare is dealt with after the fact. So like if there's somebody who's injured on the street and like you call like the police or an ambulance, they'll just take that person and bring them to the hospital. I think like the paying situation is usually where people get into debt because they can't necessarily afford the procedures that basically they had to undergo during maybe an emergency or something like that. But not that they're like outright refusing care and just saying like you don't have insurance or you don't have money, like just die in the street. I've never heard of that.
This is what happens in America. As with most things that concern America, they're wrong.
Yo. Listen. I have made that joke before, but I know it's not true. It's only because you guys have told me, like, you've been charged, like, $5,000 for the ambulance. So, like, I've heard people get taxes instead of the ambulance.
Yeah, this is sadly true where people will like refuse ambulance and they'll like try calling like Ubers or something like that instead, which is pretty terrible because they just don't want to pay for the like the $5,000 ambulance when you could get like an Uber ride for like, let's say even $50 in order to get to the hospital. And so people will generally try to avoid this if they're in this situation, which is unfortunate.
So I'm like, yo, what if you're like dying, right? You can't pay for it. You need the ambulance. Will you just die? Like, bro, what?
You can't be denied emergency medical care in the U.S. That would go against the Hippocratic Oath.
Cool.
Okay, that's good that he fact checked it. So you can't actually be denied. This is where like people will, again, like I said, just they'll get the care, but then they'll have issues struggling to pay for it. I think there is some loan forgiveness situations for healthcare, and they'll also try to work with people to help make it more affordable, like pay in installments, things like that. But it can definitely get very, very expensive for healthcare here.
The difference is that you get a bill in the mail a few months later.
Right.
Of course, debt is another issue, but let's get into that right now. Americans are all in debt. Actually, European citizens carry more debt than Americans.
Wow, I was not expecting that. I was like, that's probably true. Like, I think every American has debt. I'm sure that's not 100% true. I'm sure like there's like the Dave Ramsey crowd. There's probably like a percent of people in America, and obviously children who haven't figured out how to get a credit card yet that don't have debt in America, but like the rest of us generally do. But European actually having more debt than Americans, that is very surprising. Like we're classically known as being very consumeristic and using debt for everything.
Average debt in the U.S., OECD, is 113% of the household's income. In the U.K., OECD, is 113% of Americans. The average household debt in the U.S., OECD, is 113% of the household's income.
113%.
In the U.K., it's 156%.
That's actually a sizable difference. That's actually a very interesting fact. I've never heard that anywhere else.
In the UK?
13% of the household's income. In the UK, it's 156%.
That's crazy. That's crazy. Because with the America hospital, I've heard loads of people going in debt because of that, right? So, do you guys get...
So, actually, medical debt, while problematic, most Americans predominantly have debt from student loans or like a mortgage. And I think actually it's probably even more prevalent for the average American to have consumer debt over healthcare debt. Because most people are generally healthy despite the obesity issues and all that stuff. But they're generally able to work. Usually your employer will have healthcare there and you'll be able to afford your healthcare. Usually the folks that have these issues with medical expenses and medical debt are usually people who have like rare diseases or like unfortunate circumstances. It's not like every person you'll see down the street will have medical debt due to just trying to live their life normally. This is where consumerism and like consumer debt or student loan debt, that is pretty much ubiquitous. If you had like 100 people who are in their like 20s and 30s, I would guess like 99 out of that 100 have student loan debt probably. And so those are definitely much more prevalent. And I think medical debt is a smaller proportion of the overall American debt. But for the people who have this as a situation for them, it can be crippling because they're not prepared for the situation. And also like it's like a negative feedback loop where you are having health issues, which means that it's expensive, which is maybe meaning it's harder for you to work and maybe stay employed and earn money to then pay for it, and maybe even stay in the workforce where you'll get better healthcare. And so this is where, for the folks who are sick and not covered by standard government assistance programs like Medicare or something like that, where they would get some assistance in paying them, they could get into a lot of trouble.
From your hospital, our hospital and stuff is free, right? So the fact that we're still more in debt than you lot, averagely, that's crazy. What?
In Sweden, 173.
Yo!
And in Denmark, it's a whopping 305%.
305%, like, how is that even possible for the average person in a country? Like, that is bananas, especially because you'd have to pay taxes. So, like, even 100% of your income would presumably take you multiple years to pay off, even if you didn't pay anything else off. Like, 3 years means like every person is basically like walking around with a mortgage in Denmark, which would be insane. Like, even in America, like, mortgages are pretty high, and I think a reasonable portion of the American population has a house. But every person on average having 300%, that's pretty insane to me. I don't know how they would be able to keep living and like functioning as an economy.
What, is everyone in debt in Denmark?
Some misconceptions about the U.S. that you'd like cleared up? Or do you live in America and want to put a stereotype to rest?
This is a good video.
Let us know in the comments below.
This is a really good video. Make sure you go check him out. His link will be in the description. Let me know what you guys think to those 25 misconceptions in the comments, your opinions. Yeah, really cool. Really enjoyed it. Learned a lot in this video, so that was great. If you guys did enjoy, make sure you leave a thumbs up. Subscribe for more content. I'm live every single day on twitch.tv/L3W.
Yeah, what he's saying, I think this was a very informative video. It wasn't what I was expecting. Also, the original video itself, that person seemed a little negative on America throughout it. I'm not sure why. Maybe this is just like his character in his videos, or maybe just his persona in this particular video itself. But some of those were negative. I'm not sure exactly how they ranked each of those situations, but if you've enjoyed what you've seen, please hit like or subscribe. I will see you around.